Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. I am glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the widely available, almost universally available, and 100% free Extra Sports 1300 app. I've got a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the next 3 hours, and I'd love to talk to you about them, not just talk at you. You want to send me some feedback? 719-247-1313. That is the text and the phone line for your convenience. You can also throw me an @ on X at Gingerly Tweets. I'm sure that Sean Payton, getting to know the Broncos coach entering his second year the way that I have, I'm sure he thinks that he can get some things past those of us in the media. I'm sure he feels like he's smarter than us. But even if he's smarter than us, he needs to give those of us in the media a little bit of credit, especially when it comes to the most important thing by a million miles that is going on in his training camp. But Sean Payton clearly thinks that the media won't notice anything, like, I don't know, the fact that he skipped Zach Wilson in this rotation of giving everybody a chance to work with the ones. That's what he told us. But it sounds like Sean Payton was a little taken aback by the fact that someone in the media up at Dove Valley today pointed it out that it was supposed to be Zach Wilson, and it wasn't. Here's Sean Payton bumbling.
No, we're still look. We've got a plan. And today was yesterday. Bo ran with the ones, Zach with the twos. Today, Stiddy was with the ones. So no news to announce there. I know you're looking for it, but
well, we are. He is right about that. Doesn't that sound like a guy that maybe wasn't 100% prepared for the line of questioning he was going to receive? And how could he not know that that's what we care about more than anything else? And he set out the rotation, confirmed the rotation, reconfirmed the rotation. He's being asked about it every single day. If he wants to do something different with like the defensive backs or the tight ends, yeah, maybe a couple of the more studious media members will notice. But everyone will notice when Zach Wilson was scheduled to play with the ones today and did not. Now, could this be just an on-the-fly amendment to the rotation? That's possible. Sean Payton was asked about whether we would see Zach Wilson take first-team reps again.
Sean, just to clarify, will Zach get time with the ones?
we'll see. Yeah, but just like I said, there's nothing to announce.
Okay. Yes. It's an easy answer. Even if it is a bold-faced lie, the answer is yes. Will we see Zach Wilson with the ones? Yes. Saying we'll see means that Zach Wilson, at least for right now, is not worth running with the ones. And really, let's say that it's just based on performance. And obviously not in a good way. Zach Wilson, by all accounts, has been the worst of the three. Ask anyone, any fan, any media member that's been up there. It's been, some people maybe are a little bit predisposed to liking what they see from Bo Nix. They may put him number one. I think most people say at this point in training camp, which is not a surprise, that Stidham looks a little bit better. But across the board, the consensus is Zach Wilson is third. And what other conclusion are we to draw than Zach Wilson is not really in this quarterback competition as he was a week ago? I understand that things can change, right? But I've said all along that the end game is to have Bo Nix starting week one. That's the ideal scenario. That's what the Broncos are trying to get done. Okay, so if one quarterback like Zach Wilson just is so far behind the other two, then that gives Sean Payton and the coaches a golden opportunity to invest even more in Bo Nix's preparation for the upcoming season. So while this could be just a momentary, we're kind of moving him out of the rotation, why is there any reason to think he's going to be back in unless Stidham and Bo Nix go down the tubes? Why would you put Zach? Why would you further muddy the waters when you're clearly saying to this point that Zach Wilson, or maybe spin it the other way and say Stidham and Nix have been so good? There's enough of a separation between the incumbent starter, if you want to call Jared Stidham that, and their first round pick, and then this guy you brought in on a flyer to say, we don't need to see him with the ones. What other conclusion are we supposed to come to? And this is a good thing. Not for Zach Wilson. But you want to say the idea of if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. What if you legitimately have three that you're considering? Like three quarterbacks? The sooner you can at least vote one off the island, the better. And this was inevitable. Okay, Zach Wilson, and Sean Payton said after they acquired him, they've been working for a long time on trying to land Zach Wilson, meaning before the draft, well before the draft. So they have been working on this deal. They had their eyes on him. And maybe in a world where they don't end up with Bo Nix, Zach Wilson is going to be a real consideration for them. Although, given the fact that he has now fallen out of the rotation, then I don't know that I can even say that. But the introduction of Bo Nix changed everything. Okay, Zach Wilson was a lottery ticket. Maybe a lottery ticket where you didn't pick enough numbers. Like, I don't think you're going to hit with that. Could at some point Zach Wilson be rehabbed into becoming a serviceable starter in the NFL? Never say never. But one training camp after everything that has happened in New York? No. Not for this team, not for what this season means. And now definitely not with the first round quarterback that they got to prove was not the reach that we all thought it was. Zach Wilson was for fun. He was a puzzle that Sean Payton, that's what he likes. He did it with Jameis Winston, right? Did it with Taysom Hill. He likes this kind of thing, and Zach Wilson, in many ways, was kind of the ultimate. Because at least Jameis had some redeeming qualities in Tampa. There was a spell that it was pretty good for Jameis in Tampa. With Zach Wilson, it's been an abject disaster in New York. And I'm not here to assign blame. Let's just say they were both complicit in that. The Jets and Zach Wilson. The fact of the matter is, it was a disaster. And undoing all of that damage in one training camp when you have a guy that you've already went out and spent more than the market bears for a backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham, because you knew that once you were fed up with Russell Wilson, that you were going to go to him. But you didn't know where you'd be drafting. You didn't really dive into this quarterback class, right? Jarrett Stidham was the just in case. But then once you get Bo Nix, everything changes. Sean Payne even said it himself. He's focused on it. Not at the expense of everything else. But this is his first time doing this. And he wants to get it right. And removing Zach Wilson from the rotation just lightens the clutter with the Broncos quarterback room. And now we have, even though I have been on the record numerous times saying Bo Nix will be the starter week 1, I can leave for a possibility that Jarrett Stidham gets that job just because of his familiarity. And I've said the biggest thing with Bo Nix is that he's just got to understand and comprehend everything that Sean Payne is telling him. If he can demonstrate that, then he's good. Because he's more talented than Jarrett Stidham. But there's a slight possibility that Jarrett Stidham starts week 1. There was no way Zach Wilson was going to be the Broncos starter week 1. That might not even been the case had they not drafted Bo Nix. So this was inevitable. Is it a little bit earlier than I thought? Yeah, it was. Little early. But whatever. Hey, if Sean Payton feels like he's seen what he needs to see, then good. That should be good news to Broncos fans. But it was inevitable that Zach Wilson was going to be lower on the depth chart. And I still think he's not going to be a Denver Bronco. Said that from the outset. I don't think he makes this roster. It's not normal for teams to carry 3 quarterbacks. Now, the issue is you would be on the hook. I think something like $2.5 million. So perhaps the Broncos shop around, wait till there's some injuries after some of these preseason games and see if anybody is of like mind with Sean Payton, like, hey, I'd like to take a flyer on this guy and just, flex my quarterback coaching muscles. I'm sure there are a couple more guys in this league that are intrigued by Zach Wilson's arm talent and mobility that they'd stick him on the roster as their backup. I don't know. Maybe Andy Reid wants something to do during the season. But while it's earlier than I thought it would be, we are in a place that I know as well as you do that we were always going to get to. Zach Wilson was probably never in serious consideration for the starting job of the Denver Broncos. And with Bo Nix in the mix, that rhymes, he's probably surplus to requirements and may be on the way out. He may not even be with the Broncos for the opener against Seattle. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Zach Wilson skipped. Could you imagine? My guess is they probably told him last night. But could you imagine Zach Wilson waking up today thinking it was his day to be with the first stringers? And then you drive to Dove Valley and you get there and Sean Payton's like, yeah, no. I have nothing against Zach Wilson other than everything I just said about how he was not going to be a serious candidate to be the starting quarterback, but not a great day for Zach Wilson. But for the Broncos, I think this is good. Declutter. Make the main thing the main thing. All of those fun phrases we all use. The main thing is Bo Nix, getting him ready, and you have Jared Stidham if something goes wrong. That's all you need. Don't need 3. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, perhaps the biggest story of the Paris Olympics so far. (719-24/7-1313) is the phone and text line. I love the texts, really love the phone calls. Would love to talk at you and have you talk at me. But text is fine. 719-24/7-1313. Steve G, first one in today, says don't shed too many tears for Wilson. 2 and change will certainly help to mop up those tears. Zach Wilson getting skipped in the agreed upon rotation of quarterbacks to play with the first unit. I get it, right? They're millionaires and whatever. I understand that. But Zach Wilson has some goals for his career, right? Just like we all do. Even if you make a comfortable amount of money, there is some level of aspirations you have in your place of business. You want to be a manager. You want to run the whole place. You want this, you wanted that. Sure, Zach Wilson's happy with the money that he makes, but he's right now a bust. And that is not a fun label to carry around with you. So, yeah, he'll be fine. When somebody like Zach Wilson is on the unemployment line, it's not like you and I necessarily, but the guy wants to prove that he was worth the pick he was taken at. And now this is going to be a second location that didn't work out. The biggest story of the Olympics so far, and this may hold up given the context in which it happened, is the U.S. women's gymnastics team winning gold today. And you could see it tonight on NBC, see how it played out. You remember just a few short years ago, I sometimes forget that Tokyo was actually held in 2021. But back in Tokyo, because we had, at that time, remember, we still weren't, completely out of everything. We were hyper-focused on what was going on during the Olympics. And when Simone Biles pulled out of the team competition, it became a firestorm. And I think a big reason why is because we don't quite understand. Like, even though so many of these athletes that we watch and talk about are sustaining injuries that we don't sustain, right? When's the last time your doctor told you, I think you're going to need Tommy John? Right? We can't relate to what goes into having a Tommy John surgery. That's an athlete's surgery, medical procedure. So when Simone Biles pulls out of the team competition with something called the twisties, they need a better name for it. Branding is very important. A lot of people looked at it and are like, what is that? You're dizzy? I get up too fast. I'm dizzy. Right? And she took hell for it. She abandoned her team. She didn't tough it out. Right? And it was a reflection of our society's evolving understanding of mental health. Right? Because there's some physical, manifestations of this. but it's something you can't see. If Simone Biles landed like, did what Carrie Strug did all those years ago, it'd be easy. You're like, oh, I saw her land. It was super awkward. Like, it's disappointing that she's not competing. I know Strug went on to compete, but if something bent, if you saw something, then I think there would be more empathy towards Simone Biles at the time, but you couldn't see it. But the issue was, in Simone Biles' sport, if this affects her, she could break something or worse. Like, she is flipping in the air repeatedly and jumping around. You know how dangerous that is if you don't have your equilibrium? But she caught so much flack for it. And I've always maintained, like, look, it's one thing if you're an athlete who repeatedly is not there for your team, right? And I'm not going to call out names. You know the names, right? That is a different level. But in a one-off spot, even on the biggest stage, if somebody's not healthy and they're not right and they don't feel like they should go, then I think it's a slippery slope to start criticizing that person. Now, if Biles toughed it out, because here's the flip side, Biles toughs through it as people wanted her to do, right? She toughs through it. Let's say something catastrophic doesn't happen, but let's just say it affects her so much that it costs the USA. And then it would be what? Simone Biles went full Jean Van de Velde, full Greg Norman, Chuck Knobloch, Rick Ankiel. She had the gymnastics version of the yips. She's completely lost it. She choked. So there would be as much criticism going her way if she competed at a lesser level as pulling out completely from the competition. But because it was something like many things in the Olympics, we generally don't know anything about. The name of it sounds made up. I'll admit that. But it was unfair. It was unfair that Simone Biles got dragged the way she did in Tokyo. And for most people, I would say, she was applauded. And you see how our society is now. Mental health is more important than it ever has been. Every day, every month that goes by, we invest more and more in our mental health. Our bosses tell us, make sure you take your time off. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. So it was unfair for the criticism towards Simone Biles. But all of that does make today an even bigger story than it would be. Because she now passes or breaks a tie with Shannon Miller for the most medals by any U.S. gymnast. And think about the list. Think about how much we revere gymnasts throughout Olympic history. And now Biles has the most medals of anybody. This was a redemption tour for the U.S. gymnastics team, but let's call it what it is. It was a redemption tour for many reasons for Simone Biles. And she delivered above and beyond. The U.S. destroyed everybody today. And that's part of what we love about the Olympics, right? We like to look back 4 years or 8 years and go, oh, remember what happened to so-and-so, and now they're back and they win gold. I think this holds up as the biggest story of the Olympics. It should be, because it's, I mean, fair is fair, right? If the Tokyo Games, the biggest story coming out of Tokyo was Simone Biles, quote unquote, cost her team a chance at a gold medal, then the biggest story in this games should be Simone Biles was back. She was phenomenal. And Team USA is back where they belong. Again, you could see that chronicled tonight on NBC. I don't know if the Olympics are like a movie. My son is trying to send me YouTube clips where people are talking about Wolverine and Deadpool. I'm like, no spoilers. No spoilers. Olympics, it's tough because it's like it's airing tonight, but it's not like you couldn't have seen it earlier. It was on TV. I watched it. So hopefully I'm not spoiling anything. And NBC puts in all the bells and whistles, and they do a great job of storytelling. So it'll be even better than what I just laid out. But for all the crap that Simone Biles took 3 years ago, that energy should be matched for her coming back and dominating and helping Team USA win gold again. 719-247-1313. That may be the biggest story of these Olympics, but it's going to be hard to top a moment, a play better than what was earlier today for women's rugby. Talk about that. And why is everybody freaking out over Brock Purdy's place among the top 100 players? at switchbacksfc.com. So if the biggest story and maybe best story of the Olympics so far is Simone Biles leading Team USA to a gymnastics gold, then perhaps the best singular play of the Olympics belongs to Alex Cedric. Did you see this? So USA Rugby has never won a medal on the women's side. Never. Today, they lost their semifinal game, so they played for bronze. So all they could do is win a bronze. If they lost the match, the game, no medal. They'd still be looking for their first Olympic medal in history. They're losing to Australia. The ball is kicked to them near the goalposts, and rugby devotees, please accept my sincerest apologies for maybe not having the correct terms for all of these things. But one player for the U.S. gets hit. Hands off to another player. They get hit. Now, out of the scrum, Alex Cedric is handed the ball. Alex Cedric proceeds to Heisman the person right in front of her and then takes it the length of the field as time is expiring to tie the game up. They would make their kick and they would win the bronze medal, their first in Olympic history. You guys see this thing. It is unreal. There is a person, after Australia stopped two other members of Team USA, and they were poised to stop a third, and Alex Cedric. And it wasn't a side Heisman, it was a forward Heisman. She face palmed this woman and just put her onto the turf and took off the rest of the way down the field for a try. Right? Did I get that right, rugby fans? That's a try, not a touchdown. Essentially, somebody did the math, and I'm glad because I'd be here all night trying to figure it out. And basically an 84-yard touchdown run as time expired. Where you broke the initial tackle. Is crazy. So it's going to be hard to top that as a singular play, a singular moment from these Olympics. So business certainly in Paris is picking up. Need more gold medals from Team USA, though. Still sixth, I believe. We'll get an update from Westwood One coming up here in a few minutes. So that was pretty cool. What a lot of people find not to be very cool today is how high up on the list of the NFL's top 100 players Brock Purdy is. You want to know how I know that football season is back? Back. It's not because of training camp. It's because now we are engaged in a Brock Purdy conversation. How good is Brock Purdy? We are back. We're back. Arguing about Brock Purdy feels right, feels good. So Brock Purdy is on this top 100. NFL Network does this. They ask the players, which is important. Remember, this is the players that are voting. 28th. Let's not make this a bigger conversation than it needs to be and argue whether he's better than, Khalil Mack, who is ranked just ahead of. Let's look at the QBs because everyone's freaking out. They see Brock Purdy and they see a number that seems high and they freak out. Here are the quarterbacks he is ranked. Again, these players, it's supposed to be a this year thing, right? Sure, there's a little bit of carryover, but it's largely supposed to be this year. What did you think about these guys? He was ranked higher than Trevor Lawrence, who by all accounts had a down year, took a step back in his development. Aaron Rodgers was on the field for 4 games. You going to put Aaron Rodgers over Brock Purdy on this list? Kirk Cousins, who is his kryptonite is a game of importance. Justin Herbert, who you may argue is more talented than Brock Purdy, and you would be right, but again, this is the players voting. You know what players want to do more than anything else? And understand this about the Broncos quarterback competition. They want to win. Okay, I know it's not the number one thing you look for, but I promise you, when you ask NFL players, that's all they care about. They don't care about your draft status. They don't care about how much money you make. We care about that stuff. We say someone needs to start because they were drafted in this spot or they make this much money. The players, they don't take any of that into account. They look at it, who would I rather go into a game with? And I think that even though Herbert is more talented, and I've been saying this, like how much of the Staley stink or how much of the stink around the Chargers is it just on Brandon Staley? Is no one going to look at Justin Herbert late in games? There's some growing that Justin Herbert has to do. And I think he'll do it with Jim Harbaugh. All's well, Justin Herbert's going to skyrocket up this list, I think. But there's something left to be desired. He's above Stafford. Okay, couple years removed from a Super Bowl. He's aging. I can get that. Burrow was hurt. Jordan Love played 8 games. And then the other two, Tua, who is the AFC version of Brock Purdy, what many people think Brock Purdy is. That's what Tua is. In the AFC, look where the Dolphins ended up and look at where the 49ers ended up. And then you have Goff, who maybe doesn't have quite the group around him that Brock Purdy does. But in terms of offensive line, skill position, Goff has a lot of help. So where exactly is the big controversy here? Which one of those guys, based on what you saw last year, would you put above Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy didn't lose that Super Bowl. Right? It was just on NFL Network the other day. Of course, I watched it. Brock Purdy didn't lose that game. Wasn't Brock Purdy's decision to take the ball first. The 49ers can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy as their quarterback with this position group. I am fascinated to find out when George Kittle gets older, when Brandon Ayuk inevitably is no longer in San Francisco, how much Brock Purdy can stand on his own. And he'll still have Christian McCaffrey, which will help. But we're talking about right now. Everyone wants to throw out the numbers that he and Jimmy Garoppolo are even. I'm telling you, they're not the same. Brock Purdy is better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I look at it and I'll admit, I heard and I was like, that seems high. But then I looked at the quarterbacks he's ranked above and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I would nitpick and put one guy over another, but the pearl clutching that is going on with people that Brock Purdy is above the list of a bunch of guys who had down years, were hurt, didn't emerge until later in the season. Because to be fair, Jordan Love did play the whole season, but he didn't come on until the last 8 games. So that leaves, he's not ranked above Mahomes. He's not ranked above Lamar or Josh Allen or Dak or CJ Stroud or Jalen Hurts, probably. I don't get it. I don't see the big controversy here. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and do the who would you rather have, who has, had a better career, who's the best, right? The normal arguments we have. Yeah, I'd take Herbert over him. Yeah, I think Lawrence is going to be above him. Stafford was above him, but he's getting older. Joe Burrow, obviously, when healthy. And I think Jordan Love's going to surpass him. So if I had a prediction for this upcoming season, I think a few of these guys on this list are going to jump Brock Purdy. Unless Brock Purdy wins a Super Bowl. Because that's the bar. Like, okay, we saw Brock Purdy, the nice story. Then we saw Brock Purdy follow it up and win football games consistently and play at a high level and lead the 49ers, help lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl. If he doesn't win, then I think he gets jumped by 3 or 4 quarterbacks. If everyone stays healthy and plays to their ability levels. But based on last year, I think he's maybe I could slide Stafford above him. I think Stafford is, Stafford had a good season last year. Like, I could see an argument for Matthew Stafford, but who won that division? Right? Who won more games? Who went further in the playoffs? So I get it. And I get it because they're asking NFL players. And NFL players, more than anything else, want to win. Because if they win as a team, then they'll win in their pocketbook. Right? You're going to hear from Cortland Sutton after the top of the hour talking about this specific thing. Why isn't Cortland Sutton getting a long-term commitment? Why isn't he getting an actual raise instead of just a few extra bonuses thrown into his contract? He knows why. And you'll hear it after the top of the hour. But these guys just want to win. And there are guys on this list that cost their teams, guys that weren't available, and guys that Brock Purdy went toe-to-toe with and played better than. There's not a single guy in that column of names I just read that, without question, I would take above Brock Purdy. Not one. Could I move him down a couple of notches? Sure. But look at the group. How is Aaron Rodgers even ranked, by the way? Like, I scratch my head more at the idea that Aaron Rodgers is even on this list. That is certainly because, it's Aaron Rodgers. We got to include him. Well, he did nothing. He played 4 plays and ripped his Achilles and then was a tremendous pain in everybody's collective butt the rest of the season. Sorry for the foul language. I get a little bit agitated. It's fine. Brock Purdy is probably somewhere between 12 and 17. Right? Everybody healthy, based on everything you've seen, probably 12 to 17. He's battling with the Jared Goffs and the Kirk Cousinses and Tua for now and Trevor Lawrence for now. That's where he is. He may be at the top of that group. And I think this is what the 49ers are certainly banking on. Isn't there some reason to think there's a skosh more that he can give? We'll find out this year, but I have no problem with this list. I really don't. As long as you protect, Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, and really CJ Stroud, outside of that, go for it. Because all of these other guys have serious flaws. Actually, you know what is a better question? Like, legitimately. Why is Dak going to be ranked higher than Brock Purdy? I think that's a better question than why is Brock Purdy ranked ahead of all these guys? Why is Dak ahead of him? Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, you'll hear from Cortland Sutton what he thinks about his new-ish contract and what the Broncos need to do this season to make sure they're more successful than last. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday, almost to August, which I guess just means we're that much closer to the NFL season. By the way, Hall of Fame game and induction ceremony can be heard on this radio station this week. On Thursday, it will be the Hall of Fame game, although some luster got taken off of that game because the Bears will not play Caleb Williams, and I would seriously doubt CJ Stroud is going to be playing in that game. But Saturday will be good. So you can hear Randy Gradishar, Broncos legend, get inducted into Canton. So 6 o'clock on Thursday is when our coverage of the Hall of Fame game begins. And then Saturday at 10 a.m. is when the induction ceremony is. So keep it locked, as the kids say. Speaking of the football, I just mentioned, if you were listening in the last segment, if you're not, no big deal. We'll get you caught up here in a matter of moments. Mentioned that Cortland Sutton had something to say today at training camp that I think speaks to the mentality of players when they were voting on this top 100 and why Brock Purdy seems to be so much higher than people believe he should be. It's because ultimately the key to everything in the NFL is winning, right? It doesn't have, some of the, I know we like to talk about numbers, but it's not a sport as beholden to numbers as like baseball is. And it doesn't have some of the superstar stuff like the NBA does. It's winning. Winning first, last, and everything in between. That's what the key is. And Cortland Sutton talked about it when he gave his thoughts on his newly adjusted contract.
Yesterday, we went over turnovers.
That's not the clip I wanted. That's the other clip. Dang it. He said, I'll bring it back for what's driving the show, and you can hear the exact clip. But essentially what Cortland Sutton said was, other than, I'm happy to be here and I want to be here, and they knew that. But he made a mention of basically he's got to produce and they got to win. Right? Part of the reason why Cortland Sutton wasn't worth more than just adding some incentives to his deal is because do we even know, like unequivocally, how good Cortland Sutton is? Because what he's shown so far is to be quite inconsistent. Red zone, awesome. Love him in the red zone. Everywhere else, And that's where the fumble thing came in, so we can play that clip.
Yesterday, we went over turnovers. I think I had 3 with a fourth possible fumble last year, and, it's unacceptable. Anytime we have the ball in our hands, we've been told you got DGA, dreams, goals, and aspirations. You have everybody's, everyone in this building, in this organization's dreams in your hands, and, whether those turnovers, led to like directly correlated to a loss for us, it was something that, for myself, I looked at it as unacceptable.
Yeah, there's just not enough that you see from Cortland Sutton that says, if you're Sean Payton, I got to have this guy around. Now, for this year, you would very much like him to be around, but when you're flush with cash and maybe Brandon Ayuk is floating out there on the market, and you can supplement your receiver group, your tight end group via free agency, where would Cortland Sutton be in that pecking order? You bring in Josh Reynolds. So he knows that if he's really going to get a new deal, the new deal that he probably wants in Denver, he's going to have to produce more. Follow it up. Have we had back-to-back solid Cortland Sutton seasons? I don't think so. Now, if you're a Cortland Sutton supporter, you'll say, look at the quarterback situation, and fair is fair. Right? It's not all on him. But the guy last year looked for him first, second, third, and maybe even fourth in his progressions. And that's why we got that. So I could easily say there's a bit of regression maybe in Cortland Sutton when it comes to the number of touchdowns he catches. But it speaks to a bigger thing here with the Denver Broncos. I don't know how many actual wins are on this schedule, but they got to do a better job of giving themselves a chance to win and then take it from there. And that's something that I think Mike McGlinchey spoke on.
To start fast this year and not have the hiccups that we had, early in the season last year. I think everybody feels more comfortable, especially up front, myself included, and just the overall consistency of the game. I think it just has to be, play in, play out, block your guy, right? Like it's just do your job over and over and over again as best as you can do it. And that's all I've ever tried to do. But certainly with 1 year of familiarity of an offensive line coach, a play caller, certainly have a better feel for what's going on. So just take a step forward in the overall consistency and be the best I can be.
Outside of the quarterback situation going on in Denver, this has been one of the most talked about things over the last couple of days. And apparently Sean Payton is going, as you heard Cortland Sutton say, going over some of this stuff. What they're talking about behind the scenes is essentially we started 1-5 and didn't give ourselves a chance to even make that winning streak we went on mean something, because that winning streak just played them to the outskirts of the playoff conversation. Right? What's that old saying? You can't win anything the first month of the season. I think it's a baseball phrase, so they usually say April. Can't win anything in April, but you can lose something. The Broncos lost something in that first month or so of the season, starting 1-5. And to Cortland Sutton's point, 11 turnovers in 5 games. To Mike McGlinchey's point, 33 penalties to start the season. And you just think, you remember some of these games and what turned, and it was a pretty advantageous early season schedule. You have the Raiders, you have the Commanders, you have the Bears, right? The whole, I remember going into this season and early in the season, it's like, here's the chance for the Broncos to get off to a great start, because then they're going to run into Miami, and that will be the first real test. And then they got Kansas City shortly thereafter. But the start of the season, it was like, it was tailor-made for the Broncos to get off to a good start. Remember when Vance Joseph started like 2 or 3-1? Like, you thought that Sean Payton might be able to do that. And they started 1-5. Against the Raiders, Lutz misses a field goal. And later on, last drive of the game, Broncos go 3-and-out. Negative run for Javonte Williams. And the Broncos never get back. They have to punt it away, hoping for a turnover, and they never got it. The Washington game, Russell Wilson picked after Washington tied it. You remember Kareem Jackson in his hit that got him ejected and how that swung the game. Then you had 70-20. Then Wilson against the Jets, Wilson fumbles on the most crucial drive of the game, and Bryce Hall runs it all the way back. Or was it Bryce Huff? Bryce Huff runs it all the way back for a touchdown. And then earlier in the half, when the Broncos are leading, first play from scrimmage for the Jets, who, by the way, had Zach Wilson as quarterback. Hall ran it 72 yards, first touch. So you could look at the bigger picture and say 11 turnovers, you're not going to win. And that was a big key for the Broncos flipping things, right? And going on that streak. How many times they pick off Patrick Mahomes? You can look at that, or you could just remember each game in some of those key moments. And you're like, the Broncos made mistakes in the most important parts of the game. So going off the idea that the Broncos are going to be better than I think they'll be, that many people think they'll be, they have to get off to a better start. Right? Because they're not going on a 4 or 5 game winning streak. It's just, you can't expect that. And the number of things that took place, Buffalo with the too many men, Patrick Mahomes imploding in that football game. Like they ended up going against Josh Dobbs instead of Kirk Cousins in a game. Like, be real. The Broncos got some breaks along the way to get that winning streak. But no team can just count on a winning streak like that. They have to start better. I just wonder how well they'll be able to do it. 3 of their first 4 are on the road. They have all 4 teams, weeks 1 through 4, were among the best pass rushing teams in the NFL. They go up against TJ Watt. They go up against Vita Vea. Go up against Seattle. All these teams are good at getting to the quarterback. So this is where having a quarterback that we think will be a little bit more decisive with the football will help. If Russell Wilson, let's just live in a grim alternate universe where Russell Wilson is still the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. If you were a Broncos fan, you would be hyperventilating over the idea that Russell Wilson is going to go up against TJ Watt. Now, coincidentally, he's going to be playing with TJ Watt. But facing that early start with what you saw from Russell Wilson last year, you wonder why Sean Payton was like, I'm done with this dude. Whether it's Stidham or whether it's Knicks, because we found out today that Zach Wilson, whether Sean Payton wants to admit it or not, is pretty much out of the race, having skipped him his day to run with the ones. It's going to be incumbent on Jared Stidham or Bo Nix, most likely Bo Nix, to be quick with the football. But the Broncos can take some pressure off of them if they can run the football. And that was something that was a prevailing theme through the first few games of the season for the Denver Broncos last year. Javonte Williams didn't get going early. It took him 5-6 weeks before he was playing well. I think it was the Chiefs game that we started to see Javonte Williams look like the old Javonte Williams. But early in the season, he struggled. He missed time. The Broncos can establish a run game in the first few weeks, which is what Mike McGlinchey can help with. That's kind of his specialty. He and Quinn Meinerz, the two most important guys on the offensive line, at least in terms of how much they're compensated and the commitment the Broncos have made, they can help that. But Javonte Williams Year 2 after the ACL, bringing in Audric Estime. Another year of Jaleel McLaughlin. Broncos got to be able to run the football early. And when they do ask Bo Nix to throw the football, he's got to be quick in his decision-making. Because if he takes a page from his predecessor and hangs on to it, Broncos are not going to improve on their 1-5 start from last year. Before we break, here's Mike McGlinchey, the most senior member of the Broncos offensive line, talking about the best thing about Bo Nix.
His maturity is something that everybody is speaking to. He's learned fast on the job, and he's a very competitive dude. And he takes a lot of pride in not screwing things up, or if he does once, he's not going to do it again. He takes the little small details, such as like the cadence. It's tough when he's always coming out, asking the rest of us, hey, how can I do that better? How can I do this better? Bo's been an impressive person in our locker room, both as a player. I think he's picking things up incredibly fast and doing a great job. But as a competitor and as a teammate, he's done a great job too.
Cadence, not making the same mistake twice. Who's that sound very different from? Bo Nix is winning this job. I have not heard one person yet give me any reason to think that Bo Nix will not start week 1 against Seattle. But the next big test, he's winning in training camp, I think. But the preseason games, that's going to be for everyone to see. And we'll see how Bo Nix fares there here in a couple weeks. But he's winning this thing. And now one of his competitors, if you want to call him that. I don't think Zach Wilson ever was. But even if you did, looks like he's out of the race. 719-247-1313. Well, more Drive Time Sports after this on Extra Sports 1300. A more productive day today for Team USA in Paris. Still just the one gold medal today, that going to Simone Biles in the USA gymnastics team. But still plenty of opportunities for Team USA. And I would imagine one of the events that they thought they had a chance at least adding to their medal count, if not the gold medal count, was in triathlon. The men's triathlon was supposed to begin today, but it didn't. And it didn't because of one of the worst things, one of the grossest things you could possibly think of. I don't want to say worse because then your mind wanders. You may have seen that they postponed the swimming portion of the men's triathlon, a key component in the triathlon. Because without the swimming, it would just be a biathlon, and then the Winter Olympics would go, hey, we already trademarked that. Biathlon is skiing and shooting. Get out of here with that running and biking stuff. You got to call it something else. Two-athlon. You need the swimming portion. But when, sometimes bacteria levels in rivers can be a little tricky. Paris had to postpone the men's triathlon today because too much E. coli and other bacteria. Those levels were too high. And I don't want to get into a whole thing here. I'll let you do your own research. There's a fairly specific source that comes from in a river. Let's just call it man-made pollution. That's essentially what they're saying. There's too much waste in the Seine River. How in the world? I know you have waited maybe your whole life, at least 4 years, for this moment. And even if they come back, which they have not ruled yet on whether the bacteria levels are under control and they can have it, how do you not let this completely throw you off your game? They're basically saying that the resemblance from their most famous waterway resembles that of a sewer line, but we're going to get it figured out and go ahead and jump in. I can't, I'm being, it is a little funny, but at the same time, I'm being serious. How do you not let that completely, you step into that water? And the men's and the women's is supposed to be tomorrow. I don't even know what science is behind that. Do they, is a giant Brita filter? What is the remedy for this? But they have a backup day. So it's like when you're applying to schools, your first choice is this, then your backup, and then you have a safety. Their safety day is Friday to do the swimming portion of the triathlon. I don't even know how these triathletes are expected to step in that water. I got to know how far, wherever the threshold is, throw out whatever scientific measurement that you want. Parts per million, but whatever that is, if that's the threshold, the number that it is better be way the hell below that. Way below. I'm not getting in water that is just slightly below a dangerous level of bacteria. Like, I need more than a few parts per million down before I get into that water. But they have not ruled yet on whether they're going to have it. What a disaster. And look, go back through the history of the Olympics. There's always one thing. Sometimes it's very, very serious. Sometimes it's something that you can poke a little fun at like this, but there's always something. There's always something. You get two things. Either something that's throwing a wrench in their plans, so weather, contaminated rivers, what have you, and then we have inevitably some kind of scandal. And that's what we have with the Canadian women's soccer team. And they're appealing the sanctions that have been imposed on them. They have been deducted 6 points. They can still, by the way, make it through their group. The penalty is not so severe that Canada has no path to advance in the Olympics. But yet Canadian soccer players are like, we don't want to keep answering for this. That happened like 10 seconds ago. I know it's not your fault, but yeah, you're going to be asked questions about it. And then, of course, they say, we're being punished for this. Like, I heard it all before. I heard this from the Michigan players. Sorry, sometimes you gotta answer for something that your coach did. Right? Because there have to be repercussions. And they're not even kicking them out. They're allowed to compete. There is still a path for them to advance. They could win this whole tournament still. So this is like Sherrod Moore crying after that Michigan game. Like, they act like they have been just destroyed and ruined because of these ridiculous accusations against Jim Harbaugh. And it's like, you're still playing. Like, stop. Who should you be mad at? Not the media for asking the question, not for FIFA for punishing your federation. Be mad at the own people who feel like they can't help themselves but cheat. And I heard Tyler Adams of the U.S. men's national team. He was on some podcast. And this is all too familiar. Like, all the Spygate, Connor Stallions, now the Canadian drone soccer scandal, they all have the same ingredients. Right? Low-level staffer. We don't know completely how much the head coach had to do with it. A bunch of players feeling like they're the victims. And then we get one person, and it's Tyler Adams. That's like, everyone does that. He said that. He's like, everybody does this. And that's what the thing was with Connor Stallions. Oh, everybody does this. Everybody tries to steal signs. But then immediately Tyler Adams is like, well, I don't know that I've heard of anyone using drones. That's the entire point. That's it. This is not some like Canadian spy sneaking into the stadium and like wearing a custodian's outfit and spying on you. They are taking a drone worth thousands of dollars and flying it over your head. The technology is a major aspect. That was the case with Connor Stallions. If they want to send Connor Stallions to all of these places, if Michigan does, and get him to decipher signs, sit there, watch, and report back to them like you're trying too hard, but it's not nearly what it is if you're recording it all. It's easier to cheat with technology. This isn't tipping pitches. You got a buzzer on your chest, Jose Altuve. The technology means everything. And the idea that anybody would say, well, everybody does it. No, that's the point. Because not everybody feels like they need to go above and beyond and bring technology into the equation, because that's the whole crux of it. That's what makes it cheating. That's what makes it punishable. Yeah, the drones are the entire thing. This isn't gamesmanship. So I'm listening to Tyler Adams and I'm like, yeah, duh, that's the entire point. Yeah, I get it. People try to steal signs. People try to gain intel. I understand. Okay. And some of it is savory, some of it not so much. But when you involve thousands of dollars in technology, I feel like that's the threshold. If you use an Apple Watch, if you use a drone, if you even use your cell phone to record things and play it back, that is the line. We all set lines when it comes to these things. That's the line. Technology. It's technology, and it's how wide reaching is this, right? Because Stallions was all over the place, right? That's also part of it. If you do it isolated in one game and you're just doing it with your own eyes, then it's like, okay, we don't love it, but we understand it. But when you're jet setting across the country and using technology to record all these things, there's the line. And that's when you get in trouble. And by the way, neither Michigan nor Canada got in that much trouble when you really think about it. Canada can pull a Michigan and they can win their next match. They can get through the group stage. They can win a gold medal, and they can stand up there like Jim Harbaugh did and be a convincing martyr when everybody knows that you are guilty of cheating and you gained a competitive advantage to do it, that at least it helped you a few times. Everybody does it. Well, not with drones. Yeah, that's kind of the point. So we'll see how their appeal goes. I doubt it goes well. But just if you have a Olympics bingo card, like bacteria-infested river, postponing events, and then cheating scandal, I think you're like halfway with your free space to a bingo. Not what we want to see, not what we came to see, but inevitably it happens almost every single Olympics. Want to tell you about Low T Center. Low T Center is on the up and up. They're good. If you're often feeling tired, lacking motivation and drive, maybe you're gaining weight, noticing loss of muscle mass, it could be low testosterone levels. And for that, you need to get your levels checked. That's the only way you'll know. And at Low T Center, they make it easy to do that. It's a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you'll get results back in about 25 minutes. They're not your typical doctor's office. They're physicians specialize in this. It's what we love, right? We want to go to the source. We want to go to the people that know whatever it is the best. And that's what Low T Center is. Get back to your best Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. Ratings are out for the Olympics, and I gotta say, I'm usually interested in what the ratings are for, certain sporting events. The Super Bowl, it was a big thing because everyone was saying no one wants to watch Miami and the Nuggets play in the NBA Finals, and that turned out to garner huge ratings. There is one sport, I think, in Paris that the viewership is going to be looked at, and that's women's basketball, right? All the conversation with Caitlin Clark. You need Caitlin Clark there to grow the game, for people to pay attention. Well, guess what? Their game against Japan would outrate every game of the Tokyo Olympics except gold on both the men's and the women's side. That is a victory. However, how much more people would be watching if Caitlin Clark was playing? Right? I mean, that's good. And I'm glad, right? Because ultimately, in a more crowded landscape when it comes to sports and entertainment and everything else, right? It can't just be Caitlin forever. Right? And many times it can't just be Caitlin for the WNBA. Eventually, Angel Reese and Cameron Brink and whatever team Paige Beckers lands on, and the Aces and the Liberty, eventually everybody's got to start pulling their weight. It just can't always be Caitlin. So I think that's good. I'm glad. Right? I'm glad that people are watching, because they should watch. You should not, in protest because Caitlin Clark didn't make the team, not watch women's basketball. But you can watch women's basketball and you can root for Team USA while still criticizing the decision to leave her off the team, and acknowledging that whatever ratings they do garner would be multiplied by, it wouldn't be multiplied, it would be an exponent to figure out their ratings. They'd be massive. So if you keep it in context, it's good. I'm glad that people are watching. I watch the game. I'm not going to not watch. I'll tell you what, it'd be appointment viewing if Caitlin Clark was out there. But I'm glad. I'm glad that people, because the most important thing is that people keep supporting women's sports, because they're putting on a good product. It's getting better every year. There are some big stars like Asia Wilson and Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. None of them are at the level of Caitlin Clark in terms of star power, but they're stars. And if you've watched enough of the WNBA, perhaps you have latched on to one of those other stars and said, maybe I'll watch a game with just them without Caitlin Clark. And maybe that influenced some of the ratings. Now, the Tokyo games were a little bit off, right? The schedule was off by a year. We were still, in a kind of a different place as a country and everything like that. So I don't know how much from 2020 and 2021 we can go on as real, because everything was just, the schedules for every sport were completely different. But it's good. It is a good thing. I'm glad to see that. But just know, would have been even more if Caitlin Clark was on the team. And by the way, you would have had a little bit better time against those Japanese guards you faced yesterday with Caitlin Clark. Could have used her. A lot of the guards struggled. But it's all good. All good. They'll win gold. Be fine. Doesn't mean we can't bring up our opinions while still hoping for the best for Team USA and tuning in when we can. So 5-on-5 basketball going well, right? Going well. 3x3 is off to a rough start. The women's team led by Haley Van Lith lost today. And remember, Cameron Brink was supposed to be on this team. And they had been playing together. Haley Van Lith and Cameron Brink on an international level in 3x3. So that was a massive blow to their chances to lose Cameron Brink. But Van Lith was out there. They ended up, Dearica Hambry of the Sparks replaced Cameron Brink, and they did lose their first game today, as did the men's team with Colorado Springs' own Canyon Berry, Cheyenne Mountain grad, and Jimmer Fredette of BYU fame. They lost today to Serbia, so Serbia good at basketball 5-on-5, good at basketball 3-on-3. But as I'm watching that today, I'm trying to think in NBA, like if NBA players did that, right? And I don't think we'll ever get to a point where there'll be NBA players. I think that the way they got it going is good. Maybe we could see a G leaguer or something. I'm curious because this sport is still so new where it goes from here. But I don't know if we'll ever see NBA stars go, yeah, I won't do the 5-on-5, but I'll do this. But we'll see. Maybe there will come a day. But I was thinking, because watching that basketball be played, I don't put anything past Nikola Jokic, but I got to say that style of play would probably not be the best. The big thing about Nikola Jokic is that he slows down the game, right? He plays at a certain pace, and that's part of what makes him so great. That game is so hurried. The shot clock is cut in half. It's go, go, go. I don't think Nikola Jokic would fare very well on that team. And they didn't have any big guys. They're all like wing combo guys that were on Team Serbia. And the same could be said, Jimmer Fredette was a shooter. Canyon Berry was kind of like a swing forward at Florida. So I was just kind of thinking, like, if NBA players went, and I didn't do it by country, although that maybe I'll take it a step further and do that. But I was just mapping out, like, if the NBA did this, like maybe for their fix to the All-Star game, which is absolute garbage. Like maybe they'll play 3-on-3 with each team represented. So if it doesn't really work with Jokic, then most likely it would be Murray, Porter, Gordon. I'd be a little bit worried about Porter because you do have to defend. Right? I'd be a little bit worried about that, but his shooting in that kind of format, I think that would be the best three. Because after watching Jamal Murray, and he struggled again today, I want no part in 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray being on the same basketball court at any time ever. So I'll go Porter, Murray, and Gordon as the Nuggets 3. Would that be the best 3 that any NBA team could throw out? Because it's all about duos these days, not trios. So it's like you got your duo for a lot of teams. in your trio. It hurts the Nuggets that their best player probably isn't a fit for the format. Other ones that I thought, like Kyrie, Luka, Clay, don't play near enough defense to succeed in that game. Now, they would make a ton of buckets, but the defense is intense in the 3x3. So I wouldn't like their chances. Durant, Booker, Beal, I don't like it. I think I think AD could work. AD with his skill set might work in this format. I don't think Jokic could. I don't think Joel Embiid. Not Gobert, Wemby, but Wemby would be who's going to be Wemby, Chris Paul, like no. So I would pick Wemby, but doesn't have the support around him. I think Brunson, Bridges, and Hart, if the Knicks had a 3x3 team, would be interesting. And then I think the obvious one, I think LeBron, Reeves, and AD would work. All three of them play defense. All three of them can shoot a little bit, at least. I think LeBron, Austin Reeves, and AD could be really good in this format. I think the best, though, would be Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. I think they'd win. So the Boston Celtics would win the 5-on-5 NBA title, and they'd also win the 3-on-3 NBA title. I think Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown would be the best. I should have gone countries. I'll do that next hour. If NBA players played 3x3. But it's a different game. It's fun, though. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it. Unfortunately, today, Team USA didn't fare too well. They live to fight another day, though. 719-247-1313. Oh, Derek just texted and said Tatum Brown and Derek White. So we're on the same wavelength. I just go Holiday. I think Drew Holiday is a better version of Derek White. Is that fair to say? I think so. But Boston. Right? Boston. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the three stories that are driving the show, including the Broncos quarterback competition narrowing just a skosh after today. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300 after a Westwood One Summer Games update. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this fine Tuesday in Colorado Springs. Of course, you don't have to be just in Colorado Springs to be listening or watching the show because we are truly worldwide. I am not Mr. Worldwide. That is someone else. But the show can be accessed worldwide, whether it be on the Extra Sports 1300 app or on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is how you can interact. Or if you're watching the show on our social media, like Josiah is, I'm actually shocked that after bringing up this topic, it's like a consensus. So I'm watching 3x3 basketball today. And I'm trying to think if NBA players were in it, what team would win. And my mind went to the NBA because I want to make it like a Nuggets thing because I don't think that they would be able to have Jokic in that format. But I should go international. And I've already mapped out like 3 or 4 teams. So I'll share them with you in a little bit. But when I was talking about the NBA, there were some interesting ones, right? The Knicks, Villanova trio, Hart probably over DiVincenzo, but Bridges and Brunson. I thought LeBron, Reeves, and AD might be pretty good because I think AD's kind of just below that cutoff where like Embiid and Jokic would be, where I just don't think that would quite work. Dame, Giannis, and Middleton. Ooh, that's interesting, but I don't think Damian Lillard plays enough defense. The best 3 that I had was Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. And maybe after what happened the other day, maybe Jason Tatum should turn his attention to 3x3. But I said Drew, Brown, and Tatum. Derek comes in and says Brown, Tatum, and White. And now Josiah says Drew, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White. He was apparently he and Steve Kerr have no time for Jason Tatum. So give me your thoughts, but then I'm going to go international, and as I'm mapping this out, I'm like the USA would destroy everybody. Can you even come up with a viable 3 for some of these based on NBA players? Okay, I don't know the international level. I don't know who's up and coming for Real Madrid or FC Barcelona. So I got to go with the guys in the NBA, and that puts the international players at a bit of a disadvantage. I understand, but there's some guy, like I saw a stat the other day. It said like 70 some odd players playing in the Olympics on teams not named Team USA have played in the NBA. So there's some guys that may be just out of the league, but it's like I'd have to make some tough cuts with Team USA. With these other ones, I'm like, it's like Luka and 2 other Serbian guys, Wemby and 2 other French guys, because there's no way Gobert can hack it in 3x3. No way. So ponder that. Also, a pretty good line from Steph Curry today when it comes to how the U.S. feels about South Sudan. You remember very well what happened, what almost happened, I should say, against South Sudan. So you hear from Steph Curry. Talk a little more hoops. But right now, it's time for the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right. Story number one, I think, is that we're down to 2.
Sean, just to clarify, will Zach get time for ones?
We'll see. Yeah. But just like I said, there's nothing to announce.
Sean Payton today thought he could pull a fast one. He thought we wouldn't notice. But in fact, we have based our entire lives in the media around whose day it is to be the number 1 quarterback in Broncos camp. And when today was supposed to be Zach Wilson and it was Jared Stidham, some alarm bells went ringy dingy dingy. And Sean Payton, as smart as he is, and he's a football genius, he fumbled. He did not. He was stumbling. He was trying to. Zach Wilson is not in consideration to be the Broncos starting quarterback. That's the headline. He's not. Because why else wouldn't he get his day? It's his day. It's Zach Wilson day. That's what today was supposed to be. Guys, hide your mothers. It's Zach Wilson day, ladies and gentlemen. But it wasn't his day. And that leads me to no other conclusion than Sean Payton has decided that, yeah, I don't think Zach Wilson is a viable candidate moving forward, which should not be a shock to you because he never was. He never was. He was some pet project that Sean Payton thought he wanted to take on. How many pet projects, side projects do you have at your house right now? And how many of them have you just left and just been like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this over here. We all do it. It's the same with Sean Payton and quarterbacks. Once he got Bo Nix, that became it. That was his deck in the backyard that he wanted to build. He became fully invested in that. He's not going to do this other tiny thing and nurse Zach Wilson back to health. He was once Bo Nix was in the picture, there was no way Zach Wilson was going to be the starter. And I'll tell you this, even in a world without Bo Nix, Zach Wilson would not be the starter. If you don't think that the Steelers can get Justin Fields to be productive, then why in the world do you think Zach Wilson is worth saving? Justin Fields has shown way more than Zach Wilson as a pro. But Sean Payton decided, like, yeah, I'd like to do this. I like to tinker with quarterbacks. I like to, rebuild them. And then they landed Bo Nix in the draft at a spot where no one else was going to draft him. So I don't know even why they carried on with the Zach Wilson trade, but they did. But once Bo Nix came in the picture, it was like, yeah, no, I'm done. Zach Wilson versus Jared Stidham. Jared Stidham wins. Zach Wilson versus Jared Stidham and Bo Nix. Zach Wilson is the odd man out. And that's what the significance of today is, which is good. You want to declutter. You want to focus. Make the main thing the main thing. It's Bo Nix. And then Jared Stidham is there if you need him. Full speed ahead for the Denver Broncos in getting Bo Nix ready for week 1. Here is another Broncos story for story number 2. No, actually, let's go to the Olympics first. Sometimes I have these mapped out. Sometimes I'm just like, what am I feeling? Story number 2 will probably hold up as the biggest story of these Olympics. Because earlier today, Simone Biles completed her redemption tour and led Team USA back to the top of the podium in the team gymnastics event. And everybody's saying redeem, redemption, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that's even a slight mischaracterization. Right? If we equate this to basketball, the reason for the redeem team was not because the team previous was all hurt. It was because they weren't any good and lost. That's the whole thing with Simone Biles. She took so much flack for something that she shouldn't. But she had to pull out of that very same event in Tokyo because she had something called the twisties, which I would hope 3 years down the road that they would come up with a better name for. But they haven't. She's dizzy. Can you imagine flipping in the air if you were dizzy? If you didn't have your equilibrium? She had a legitimate reason to pull out of that event, and she got chastised for it. She was the biggest story. Her not competing was the biggest story in the game. So why wouldn't her competing and dominating and the U.S. winning be the biggest story of this Olympics? So call it redemption, call it what you want. But Simone Biles today broke a tie with Shannon Miller and now has the most medals of any U.S. gymnast. We already decided that she was not just the GOAT of gymnasts. She was the GOAT when it came to any female Olympian. But now any holdouts will look and see that no one has more medals than her. And she's not done. More gold medals, I should say. Because what she's not done is having the most. 4 more events on an individual basis for Simone Biles. But they were awesome today. They ran away with it. It wasn't even close. But those who were vilifying Simone Biles, saying she was quitting on her team, calling into question whether the reason she pulled out of the event was legitimate. Well, she was back. And I don't know though those people are going to now apologize, but if her missing is the biggest story of last Olympics, then her dominating and leading Team USA to gold should be the biggest of this Olympics, I would think. Now let's go back to football for story number 3, and that is Brock Purdy, ranked 28th, right? 28th in the NFL top 100. There's so many names. Yes, 28th. Remembered it off the top of my head. And people are freaking out because it is Brock Purdy. Here are the quarterbacks that he was listed above. Trevor Lawrence made people doubt he was worth the contract he was just given. Aaron Rodgers, the best thing he did last year was carry an American flag out onto the field. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota saw all they needed to see and was like, we're done with this guy. Justin Herbert has to own up a little bit, a tiny bit, to what has happened with the Chargers. And now with Jim Harbaugh, he'll win a ton of games because he'll have a coach that knows what he's doing. Matthew Stafford, maybe, it's comparable. Joe Burrow, hurt. Tua, a less successful version of Brock Purdy. Everything that people say about Brock Purdy, they say it about Tua, and Brock wins more than Tua. Jordan Love. No one was paying attention to him till the last 8 games of the season. If you want to argue for Jared Goff If you'd like to argue with Justin Herbert and say he had nothing to do with the Chargers' failures, and oh, by the way, he got hurt, which is probably a bigger reason why he was down on the list. Trevor Lawrence, banged up, played under expectation. Aaron Rodgers, hurt. Kirk Cousins, not a big game quarterback. Justin Herbert, hurt. Joe Burrow, hurt. Then you have Love, who didn't come on to the last half of the season. And really the argument is Stafford, Goff, Tua. And people are going to act indignant because the NFL players put Brock Purdy above those three guys. Who'd you rather have right now? Who'd you rather have right now? Over those three guys, only because Stafford is aging, I'd take Brock Purdy over all three of them. Tua's got to do something in weather that's colder. He's got like that old Buccaneers problem where he can't do well in like 30-degree weather. He's got to show more. Jared Goff essentially is an older Brock Purdy. Right? I mean, you throw enough great players around him, yeah, it's going to work. One of the brightest football minds in the NFL said, I'm not trying to win anymore with that guy. Like, there's no one on this list that you could legitimately pound the desk and be like, how dare they? This is based on last year, first and foremost. It is a poll of the players who all they want to do is win. And everybody was happy, right? McCaffrey got his touches. Ayuk got his touches. Kittle got hit. Everybody was happy. Nobody is saying that Brock Purdy is going to rival Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. Even CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, and Dak Prescott. Although I still think that maybe Brock Purdy should be above Dak. But these other guys that bring a little bit more to the table, that are putting up huge numbers, that are winning MVPs, no one's saying Brock Purdy's better than those guys this past season. And again, it's this past season. I fully expect Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Let's just go through the list now. This time next year, maybe Trevor Lawrence, maybe Aaron Rodgers. He'll still be above Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going to jump over him. Probably Justin Herbert, not Jared Goff, not Matthew Stafford, definitely Joe Burrow, maybe Tua, definitely Jordan Love. So already he's going to slide down 3 more places. This is not based on what we usually rank players or say who are the best in the NFL. Justin Herbert is better than Brock Purdy. Jordan Love is better than Brock Purdy. Joe Burrow is far better than Brock Purdy. He is totally fine where he is on this list. Don't understand why people are freaking out. They should be freaking out over how much bacteria is in the river Seine over in Paris. That's the thing that people need to be clutching their pearls over. Too much E. coli. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, what does the U.S. have in store for their rematch with South Sudan? I think I don't know how many people watched Team USA's win against Serbia. I would imagine quite a few. But I got to believe after not only what happened in the exhibition games leading up to the Olympics, but also all the discussion out after the game against Serbia, I got to imagine that people are a bit more intrigued in this matchup against South Sudan than perhaps they were before. Let's make the main thing, shall we? South Sudan was 40-something point underdogs and took Team USA down to the wire. If not for late heroics from LeBron James and a missed foul call, South Sudan would have beaten the United States, a team that has been completely funded by Luol Deng, which is a crazy, like, Team USA is funded by Nike and Wheaties and, I don't know who all their sponsors are, but like they have these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are backing them. And the South Sudan basketball team is financed by Luol Deng, former Duke Blue Devil, former Chicago Bull. That is amazing. And the NBA has made a lot of strides in Africa trying to grow the game and stuff. So the NBA's helped. They're developing that part of the world. But to think that, and I know Luol Deng made a lot of money in his career, but for him to feel that strongly, to basically be the financial backer for the South Sudan national team, it's quite a story. It's really cool. But the fact that they took Team USA to the brink, that's kind of a loss. Right? I mean, let's be honest. It goes down as a win, but it's kind of a loss. What are you doing letting South Sudan take you to the brink like that? Well, Steph Curry says that they got the right mindset going in to the rematch.
We have appropriate fear of everybody. Like, it's the exhibition schedule was great because you got to figure out where we need to get better and also feel the force of teams that are coming trying to beat us.
And for Steph Curry, the Olympics is new to him, but it's not new to a lot of these guys. So I don't know what I can make kind of an excuse for Steph Curry. I don't know how much I can make an excuse for other guys on the team. Steph also talked about one of the big areas where they are still improving.
Really, the biggest adjustment is for us as a team to put all our different skill sets together on the fly. Like, if this team had a full year of, like, you know, training and chemistry and all that, we wouldn't be talking about the adjustment that much. It's just because we have to go from playing against each other for years and years and years to then now playing together in a 5-week span.
There's some truth to that, right? That's not a new phenomenon. That's been the discussion when the U.S. loses. It's because they don't have enough time together. So their team is put together with no time, and the women's team won't let Caitlin Clark in because she doesn't have enough time. Interesting dynamic. Anyway, I do expect this team to put away South Sudan much earlier. Okay, because they have gotten a little bit better in their chemistry, but they're going to be motivated. Like, they can't. I think they'll be looking to make a statement. And this is the game where they can, I think. And I think they'll be looking looking to do that. But to his point about meshing skill sets, one name comes to mind when I hear that, and that is Joel Embiid, who told the New York Times that he's loving not being the guy. He's loving it. And I got to imagine for someone like him, it does have to be a lot of fun to be hanging out with those guys. Because I'm not denying that Joel Embiid is one of the 12 best American players. He is, okay? But he's not fit. He's not fitting with this team right now. And he talked about how he has to do some other things. The problem is he never does those things. I've never seen Joel Embiid be a good passer. I've never seen Joel Embiid play team basketball. But to be fair, and after kind of torched him yesterday, I want to be a little bit fair to the guy. If you were on those Sixers teams, you would be calling your own number repeatedly over and over again every single game of every season. Right? But it's interesting because now it's different. Now he's got Paul George. Now Tyrese Maxey is emerging. So that'll be an interesting dynamic because the pieces seem to be there for Joel Embiid to play more team basketball. But I don't know if he's capable. I just don't see a guy that when he can't call his own number can function with a group of other players that are at his level. But that's the Sixers' problem. That's Nick Nurse's problem to figure out. In the meantime, he's got to be better. They're never going to take him out of the starting lineup. But he's got to be better. And then obviously Jason Tatum's going to get more minutes. The easy change that I think Steve Kerr will make is I think he'll get his minutes at the expense of Derek White. And let me launch a preemptive strike. Do not, I get that people around here have an affinity for Derek White. I'm just saying the idea that Kerr is tearing apart the Boston Celtics because he's not playing Derek White, stop. Just don't even start. But if he goes with somebody else, if Derek White stays in the rotation and someone else goes out, Steve Kerr's going to have the same problem after South Sudan. But I promise you this, Jason Tatum might start. He might put Steve Kerr, just to make a point, might put Jason Tatum in over LeBron. He'd be like, no, LeBron, this is Jason Tatum's game. This is his game. Everybody clear out. Joel, get out of the paint. Jason Tatum, you go do your thing. Notice that nobody is making this same proclamation for Tyrese Halliburton. Where are the people enraged that Tyrese Halliburton didn't make it in the game? He's like the Christian Laettner of this team. Everyone's like, oh, cool. I kind of like him. Yeah, I don't need him to play. I'm good. We'll see what the U.S. has in store for South Sudan this time around. Over under 2 missed shots for Kevin Durant tomorrow. I'd probably take the over, but I wouldn't be shocked if he comes up with another performance like he did. We didn't see him against South Sudan. right? We didn't see him against Serbia in the exhibitions, and then he plays against Serbia and he can't miss a shot. Serbia is better than South Sudan. Maybe Kevin Durant will go 10 of 11 or 12 of 13 or something. I've been asked by a few people over the last couple of days what who would be the biggest threat to Team USA in this tournament. And I think the answer is actually fairly easy. I think it's Serbia with more Jokic minutes. Right? Jokic, they were tied at 81 when Jokic was on the floor. Like, that was the scoreline. It was a ±0 when he was on the floor. When he was off the floor, it was 23-9. And the Serbian coach may go a full Michael Malone and play him for the duration if they meet again later on. More Jokic minutes moves the needle more in Serbia's direction. Now, I don't think enough to beat Team USA, but if you're asking me who the biggest threat is, I think it's the team they beat on Sunday, just with more Jokic minutes. France is interesting. Knowing Wemby and how, like, he just, like, exponentially improves every time he's on the floor. So I'd say Serbia, France. If they had to meet up with those two on their way to a gold medal, it could get a little tricky. It could be a little bit tough. I don't think Shea's going to be able to carry Canada against the U.S. And Jamal Murray again today was basically a non-entity. That is not working. Him and Shea. But I don't blame Canada. Blame Canada. Remember that. I don't blame them. I think the thought process is sound. It's just the results not there. It's not playing out the way they would have hoped. Jamal Murray needs the ball in his hands. So I'd still say Serbia, and then, of course, France. Not South Sudan, although I was wrong earlier about South Sudan when I believe I said the U.S. being 45-point favorites. I think they'd have no problem with South Sudan. So who knows? 719-247-1313. So I was doing this 3x3 thing. I watched today both the men and the women lost, which is a bummer for Team USA, but they can still they got more games to try and figure it out. And I was putting together these 3x3 teams for NBA teams. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? I want to go international. If you were asking me NBA players, I can barely put together teams for these other. And then Serbia, it would be like Bogdanovic. Because I don't think Jokic works in that format. And I don't know any of these other. They're the other guy who played for Charlotte this year. It could be Bogdanovic and him, and then that guy that made a few threes. That's one thing, too, for Serbia. If they meet up again, expect Serbia to shoot much better from the perimeter. They were awful shooting three-pointers. But it's like I put together Canadian Jamal, Shea, and RJ Barrett. Or Dylan Brooks, if I just want to. My key to victory is annoying the bejesus out of the other team. But I'm watching Jamal Murray and SGA. I'm like, they're not working together. They're not a fit. If NBA players played 3x3, I think I go Edwards, LeBron, and Tatum. All three bring defense. All three can make shots. All three can attack the rim. I mean, you think Steve Kerr's and Grant Hill's job was difficult trying to pare down the roster to 12. Could you imagine if it was 3? Maybe Kevin Durant. Although you got to play defense. And I know LeBron's aging, but give me one tournament. That's what you're seeing with LeBron. LeBron doesn't have 82 games leading up to this, right? He's had a break. This is what we are getting. Forget bubble Jamal. This is bubble LeBron. This is what LeBron had when the Lakers won the finals. He got a break. He got a rest. LeBron with rest is arguably the best player on either team that he goes up against. So I take LeBron in 3x3. You get a couple months off after the NBA season. But I think Tatum or Durant probably. I think Tatum is a fit thing. I don't think he's necessarily the third best American player. I'm just watching the way they play, and I'm like, I think Jason Tatum would be good in that kind of format as well. Big guys don't work. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic. Giannis and AD, I said, are kind of borderline. They could probably work. Give me your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the MLB trade deadline came and went, and the Rockies started to do what you would hope they would do, and then all of a sudden they stopped. Talk about that. But in the meantime, want to ask you, is arthritic joint pain keeping you from doing the things you love? There are exciting new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief. QC Kinetics is helping patients like you every day, all across the country, and especially here in Colorado Springs, because they're the nation's leader in advanced regenerative medicine. They'll tell you more about it when you go in and talk to them, but I can tell you that these are treatments that accelerate your own body's healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. If you're living with chronic pain from arthritis or injury, you need to know steroids, surgery, pain pills, no longer your only options. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are ready to help you get your life back with regenerative, restorative cellular treatments for your achy joints. Call for a free consultation now, 719-347-1988, 719-347-1988. QC Kinetics, the future of medicine, 719-347-1988. Celebrate back to school with Switchbacks FC this Saturday, August 3rd at Widener Field. Be there at 6 as a very limited amount of fans. I don't even know what the number is. They won't tell me. But a very limited amount of fans will get a special edition Switchbacks hat provided by Phil Long Dealerships. And then after the Switchbacks get a much needed victory against Phoenix Rising, experience a fun back-to-school fireworks display. It all goes down this Saturday night, 6 p.m. at Widener Field. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. The MLB trade deadline came and went earlier today, a little over almost 2 hours ago. You can tell by the fact I haven't brought it up till this point that it was not, it didn't end with a bang. Dodgers get Jack Flaherty to bolster their rotation. So I think that and the Padres made a deal, got a starter from the Marlins. So there were some moves of note, but I think the Jazz Chisholm acquisition by the Yankees probably ends up being the most significant, and the Yankees didn't do enough. Didn't do enough. Need more. They got a couple of really good nights from Jazz, and Brian Cashman's like, I'm done. It's like, no, you're not. They needed more. We'll see how that plays out. But the Rockies actually had a fairly promising start to the trade deadline. All the talk going into this trade deadline season was there's so many teams that you don't know if they're buyers or sellers or what they'll do because, of this extra playoff team and all this kind of stuff, which this is one of the unintended consequences of giving more teams access to the postseason, is that they are less likely to admit that they are out of it. And mathematically, they can make that argument. Rockies aren't one of those teams. I get why they didn't want to part with Ryan McMahon. I do. Okay, could have fetched you a pretty high-level prospect in return. Absolutely. I don't know if it would be Jason Dominguez level from the New York Yankees, but he could have fetched the most of any player that you could realistically see get traded. But I understand why they held on to him. I just don't want him to turn into like Charlie Blackmon, where it's like they're going to give him an extension and everyone's going to be like awesome because he's playing at an all-star level, which Ryan McMahon is right now. And then 2 years after it, we're like, this is the biggest waste of money. Because that's what Charlie Blackmon's extension turned out to be, like 5 minutes after he signed it. But I think Ryan McMahon is also a player that you could always trade next year. So that's not the one. But they started by dealing these relievers. And it's great because Rockies relievers are awful. So if anyone is willing to take on any of these relievers, have them. And they traded Jalen Beeks for Freddie Peralta's little brother, who's in the Pirates system and has been fantastic. People in Pittsburgh are like legitimately like, why are we giving up this guy to get a rental bullpen arm? Try to hold Paul Skeens' leads. That's why. But it started off and you're like, the Rockies aren't going to wow you with anything. They're not going to get huge prospects in return. But it's like with the Rockies, you just want to see them do the right thing. Okay? When they're in the position they are, and this goes back to Trevor Story and John Gray, if you're not going to sign these guys, trade them. Get prospects back. And they started to do the right thing, and then they stopped. Cal Quantrill, still on this team. Austin Gomber, still on this team. Why? Why? I liked what I've seen from Cal Quantrill. I love what he did Reese McGuire. That was savage, and that will be hold up as the best moment of the Rockies season by far. But if this team is what? 3 years away at best? Is Cal Quantrill going to be effective in 3 years? That's how you got to approach it if you're one of these sellers. Like 3 years, 5 years, whatever you think you are. Like, is this guy on the roster going to help us then? Like, Nolan Jones, he can help you. Brenton Doyle can help you when you get better. Ryan McMahon, maybe, if you get some things right. I don't know what Cal Quantrill or Austin Gomber are. So, I would say, though, it's progress. They traded some people. Remember, there was an entire year where the Rockies did not do anything, did not make one single transaction. So, baby steps. But to be fair, I mean, I don't know how much a lot of their guys would fetch on the market. So now the last thing that the Rockies could actually make the news about is now over, and it's just about are the Yankees too flawed? Are the Dodgers too injured? Are the Mets real? And can anyone stop the Phillies? And the answer is the Dodgers. Let's pick one of those two. But yeah. And then Paul Skeens. Can Paul Skeens? I'm telling you, if the Pirates get into the playoffs, they could be the Arizona Diamondbacks. Because the Arizona Diamondbacks last year, they weren't great, right, during the regular season, and neither are the Pirates. Diamondbacks weren't the best team in the National League, not even close. But they got hot, and with that rotation led by Paul Skeens, Pirates could be a little bit interesting. So that's that for the day, actually. Appreciate your patronage. NBC's coverage of the Olympics should be starting here within the next half an hour, and you'll be able to watch Simone Biles lead Team USA to a gold. I'm sure they will show that insane finish in rugby. Things picking up at the Olympics. Still not enough gold medals for us American exceptionalists, but they're coming. More golds over the next few days. Appreciate you tuning in. I do want to get in a word, if I may, for Low T Center. If you're often feeling tired, lacking motivation and drive, gaining weight, or noticing a loss of muscle mass, may not be because you're lazy, because you're not lazy, are you? You're doing what you need to do. You're eating right. You're getting outdoors. You're exercising. May be out of your control because it may be low testosterone. Don't wait, find out. At Low T Center, they make it easy to get your levels checked. It's a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you'll get results back in about 25 minutes. The experts at Low T Center have over a decade of experience helping patients achieve life-changing results, and most health insurance is accepted for treatment. And they have a variety of treatment options, including for established patients with stable T levels. How about a convenient physician-monitored self-inject treatment? You don't even have to leave your house. So get back to your best. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. As always, it has been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve you. Enjoy your evening. Be back tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.